Okay, so I'm here with Joan Parsons. Joan's been on staff with Campus Crusade for Christ for 26 years. And prior to her role now, Joan and her family lived and served in Budapest with the Jesus Film. Currently, Joan serves on the Neighborhood Bible Study to Go team here in Metro Atlanta as a blogger. And I have the blessing of working alongside her on this same team. So, okay, Joan, here are the questions. In Budapest and the other places where you ministered, what sort of features about the Jesus Film, how it was created, what the content in it? I know it was Luke, but what about the Jesus Film did you see working to communicate the gospel? Whether it was what was in the film, how it touched people's lives, how it touched a community.
Yeah, a couple of things that immediately come to mind are kind of the two things. Just that, and God's word is very specific that says when Jesus is lifted up, he'll draw men to himself. So when we would advertise about the Jesus Film in different cultures and these communities, it just naturally brought a crowd. But also we would a lot of the way the Jesus Film looked in the showings that we did in Eastern Europe, it happened around, it sort of looked like and mirrored like a Billy Graham crusade, you could say, where we would blanket the city with advertising. At that point, we were there in 1998, so social media wasn't a huge thing at that time. Email was working at that point, but the advertising just looked a little bit different, more like billboards and handbills, a lot of posters, that type of advertising. But that had a huge role and a huge impact in people, of course, even knowing that the film was being shown. And we would also try to coincide it with something with the city that was happening with the city. So like in the city of St. Petersburg in Russia, they would have a festival that was celebrating, how many years that the city had existed. And because of the fall of communism, they were really into celebrating their history and their past. So we would try to have these campaigns come alongside about the same time as these festivals would happen, just because people were in the mood to celebrate or be together and have community. So that's kind of some of the things that happen in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, that's okay. Good. So kind of moving now into your role of blogging. So what pieces of information did you have to learn or kind of observe, either through trial and error or just learn about kind of the thought processes of believers when it comes to what they enjoy seeing in a blog or reading in a blog, what they don't enjoy reading as much, what you saw got more reach versus not as much reach, or what pieces of information do you see believers through the avenue of a blog applying more to their lives or not taking to heart as much?
I think blogging for me has been such an interesting new facet, I guess, to ministry. My major in college was math, and so the whole English language I've just always enjoyed, and just at a distance, because I've never found myself particularly gifted in that area, except I enjoy reading, and I also enjoy seeing what other people like, or what trends, or why something is popular and why something isn't, and especially in the Christian world, why do people gravitate towards certain authors, certain speakers, certain bloggers? What draws people's attention to that? And then, of course, for us to be effective, we just always want to be teachable in that area. And so when I began writing, I think one of the things that was most fascinating is just to be a student of myself and say, what was I drawn to? Why did I open a blog? And then not only that, why did I open a blog? What was it that I wanted to apply? Like the question said. So, of course, if it's grounded in God's word and it is something that is, encouraging and motivational to me, those are the things that I for sure want to apply to my own life. But I think what was interesting to me is when I found myself actually clicking on a blog that was of interest. Actually, you have just a second to get somebody's attention in the memo.
Right.
And so whether or not somebody clicks on can be determined in 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's fascinating. So it's one of those, like, you want it's what used to be a real struggle for me to try to find a title to a whole paragraph, something, now it's like a challenge. What is something that's, number one, going to get somebody just to read
Mm-hmm.
what you feel like God has even given you, or a story that you found fascinating? You want others to enjoy that too. So a lot of times it's just that little title that you think
Right.
you want people to kind of be drawn to. And then, of course, the content you want to be well written and desirable for anybody to read and to learn and to grow by, because the things that we get to learn and grow in and at MBS To Go are so neat and powerful, and we want
Exactly.
others to be able to experience that too. We just want to
Kind of
share
what we
it.
find joy in, they will too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in your, going back to your work over in Eastern Europe with the Jesus Film, were there any obstacles to ministering to people in another culture than the culture you were originally from? Was it made easier that you were bringing over a film in their language, or was that totally separate, or?
I think one of the things that has always been true for the Jesus Film is that they really tried, when they originally filmed it, to make it as authentic as possible. Mm-hmm. And even the color scheme is really subdued, because they really went back to try to see what the colors would have been like in 2,000 years ago.
Right.
And so everything is a little bit bland, and they really try to have as many Jewish, people. So they tried to make it as authentic as possible. But so when you think about bringing it to a new culture, instead of it being a fancy Hollywood movie from America, it was more like the real, it was tried as much as possible to make it like a Jewish simple movie that would have been operable 2,000 years ago. So the cultural barriers that we faced were pretty minimal. The big thing was having it appropriately translated. Mm-hmm. And having actors and actresses. Actually, some of the countries that we did or that are done in the language, we had some of the voices that were chosen were actually voices that those countries would have already known, because they were stars. They were Hollywood, but they're Hollywood stars that they would have already recognized their voice, and that gave us some credibility, just that they would recognize those voices. And God really uniquely allowed us to do that. I want to say especially in the country of Romania, that was a really powerful thing, that they had Romanian actors and actresses actually, that the country, that they were. So but we just always were trying at every level just to come in and say, how can this work in your country? It never does us well to say, this is the plan and this is what we want to see happen. It's always to take that step back and say, how can this bring the gospel to how can we most effectively do this alongside of you? How can we serve you in your desire to reach your country for Christ? So.
Rather than coming in as, we know what we're doing and we're going to give it to you. Yeah. So the last question is, one of the goals for this class I'm in is to explain how Christians can faithfully steward media for evangelism and missions. So when you look at the world of blogging that you're involved in now, what is one way that you could see, like a ministry team like MBS To Go, or an individual who blogs about their life experiences, how could they best steward that media outlet for evangelism, and if it comes to it, missions, overseas?
I think, the power of media right now and the century and, our time and our life right now, it's amazing, to think that, somebody in the deepest parts of Africa can have a cell phone and, just have access is so amazing. So it's a powerful thing when we want to use media and for evangelism and world missions. I think that's just one of the things that's always a challenge, and just a part of prayer is, how can this go forward?
Right.
And of course, I think just even as MBS to Go exists too, it's just one of those, like, it's a huge amount of prayer that goes into it, a huge amount of Lord, how do you want? I sense you wanting to lead in this way. I sense you want to use my giftings in this or that way, and how can that how can we go forward from there?
Yeah.
So I think that's just kind of the thing. It's just really asking the Lord, and then just doing your homework on, what does it look like to develop a website, and what does it look like to advertise through that, and how are you going to get the word out with your mission? And it's just one of those, like, as you cast a vision, I love that, where people want to be a part of a vision. They want to be a part of your mission, if God has kind of entrusted that to them as well. And so it just kind of naturally gets out there as you pursue. But it's definitely a matter of prayer and just doing your homework and working hard at it too.
Exactly. So. Yeah. Well, thank you for helping me with the assignment. And I know I only touched on a small part of your huge ministry, so thank you for boiling it down. And I hope that, as we're saying, media is so prevalent that it's going to be used to help people who are in similar ministry, like it said, to faithfully steward media for evangelism and missions.
Thank you.